Hello, it is once again another episode of Write Once, Read Many. It is going to be 14.10 and 14.11. Let's start off the arch. Or 14.10. As the reminder for the audience participation questions, for 14.10, do you think Jack could have gotten Amy to join him if Taylor hadn't shown up? And 14.11, which shippers lost their minds the hardest during this chapter? So we'll talk about all that later. Vale's here. Hi, Vale. For themes, I didn't think of anything specific, but I had like a vague notion that there's like the theme that they had like a really Pyrrhic victory throughout everything. Greg says, everybody getting all kissy. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like weird Pyrrhic victories and slow losses. That's kind of a theme. You know, as you can see in this art, we've got a Victoria cocoon, which Vic is actually typing me a message about this right now. Had to read that shit so many times to parse even 50% of what's going on with her, lol. Yep. And, I mean, but I love it. So that, there's the final version. Vale says, Amy had to heal Victoria because she was coughing. That's pretty good. She was sarcophagus. Yeah. Anyway. I guess getting into 14.10, the chapter opens with a contrast of Arcadia High being a generally well-maintained nice school before Leviathan, but now it's kind of like a location from a Stephen King book or something. It's like crossing the Langoliers, taking the dead, empty world that they go into, and then you cross it into the Stand for how the leader of the bad guys seems like he's some unkillable devil man. Skitter's mentally reciting who the others she's looking for are and where she was told to look for Panacea. So I thought all this italicized mental recitation stuff conveyed the frantic mood that she has really well, because the agnosia feels palpable in this chapter. I think it was really well written. So there's traces of miasma in the air. So there's faint traces of evil red mists and stuff too. But because the school has a wall around it as like a ring, the immediate vicinity of the school actually didn't have very much standing water or anything, or like water directly connected to the other part. So it's not just spraying prions into the air. But I couldn't tell from the description of the chapter. I kind of thought this was like a short wall, but they didn't actually say, because I went back to read it and I was like, oh, I just had like this image in my head of like a 3-foot wall, but really could be anything. And then there's another quick mental recitation. After Skitter got into the air on Atlas, the mechanical spiders couldn't keep up with her, so she thinks they might go to Bonesaw for more instructions. Given that she's flying in and needs to get to the top floor, Skitter just lands on the roof instead of going in the front. And her phone has no signal here, which she checks for to see if she can call for backup from really anyone. And she thinks about, like, doing a bat signal with her bugs, a giant 9 over the building. But she's worried about, like, the negative outcomes of that. The thing she thinks of specifically is that the heroes will bomb the place, killing Panacea. But what I had thought of is that it could also draw in other members of the 9, especially because she doesn't know who the other members are or how many are still out there. So she thinks of the names again, this time only once instead of twice. But Skitter feels the cut Jack gave her last chapter, and I pulled out this little quote. I couldn't distinguish the blood from the black fabric of my gloves, so I couldn't tell how much it actually was. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. So I thought that was really good. The costume that protects her is being used as a way to, like, mask her poor state of being, even to herself. It's great stuff. But Skitter's making her way inside and setting up tripwires as she goes, mapping out the area with bugs. She keeps herself on track by continuing to chant the names and powers in her mind. There are traps along the way, odorless gases that probably would have killed or knocked out Skitter. So it's a good thing that, she's infiltrating with crazy bug powers to scout the area. Finally, in audible distance of a conversation between the 3 people she's looking for, she hears Panacea Luke Skywalkering super hard. And at first I thought it was a kind of thin comparison, and then I was just like, looking at it. Jack's like, there is no escape. Don't make me destroy you. Amelia Claire Levere, you do not yet realize your importance. You have only begun to discover your power. Join our team and complete your training. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring an end to the world. I'll never join you! If you only knew the power of having no morals. New Wave never told you about your father. They told me enough! They told me he's in the birdcage! No. Marquis is your father. No! No, that's not true! That's impossible! Search your feelings. You know it to be true. No! No! Amelia, you can fuck your sister. I have foreseen this. It is your destiny. Join us, and together we can be the worst. Yeah, so Jack gives his pitch. He's trying to Darth Vader pretty hard here. But just like Vader, he fucks it up. But anyway, moving on from that silly recreation of the scene to a slightly more realistic depiction of what had happened, we see Bonesaw completely controlled by Jack, knowing that he's, looks down on her and stuff, just doesn't care. And Jack is desperately trying to do his thing, but doesn't end up getting Panacea to break her rules. It's like he's not even as good at his main thing as Bonesaw is. In fact, of the people in this scene, 4 out of 5 of the characters have Panacea breaking her rules, and Jack isn't one of them. So, yeah, pretty bad hit right here. So Jack gives us some background on Marquis. He tried to force him to break his code, and failed to do that as well, of course. I'm sensing a trend here. We get told by Jack that Marquis didn't kill Allfather's daughter, and I weirdly do believe Jack here and, the conviction of the stuff he's saying, because it makes more sense to me than the other way around, that Marquis, did kill her. But the idea that he was trying to get Dragon to do exactly what she did and, send out a message is a good way to show Marquis being clever and stuff before we even fully meet him in later interludes. Jack accurately assesses that Panacea is just as wrapped up in her own internal rules as Marquis is. And he talks about Panacea's sister being in the room. Skitter adds the sister into her expectations when she's thinking about things. But during the conversation, Skitter's closing in. She's trying to wait for the perfect moment to strike, gun ready in hand. But Panacea says she's not a monster in the same way that they are. Jack drops in some info about ending the world. He says there will always be survivors, which is kind of like small-scale thinking, given the possibilities that powers open up. I mean, what if the whole world blows up or something? But Jack wants Panacea to argue with him so he can have like a little fun conversation or whatever. And Skitter is thinking about how she has better talking points than Panacea can come up with. And like, she's definitely annoyed that she's not in there owning Jack's ass in the marketplace of ideas. I think we all know that Skitter is secretly one of them debate perverts, and she hasn't had internet access for days, so she's itching. But Skitter visualizes herself standing and taking the shot, and she realizes that the glass in the way will be a tell for the others, and carefully brushes it out of the way without a sound. And Jack is going on and on to Panacea about how she's got a monster inside her, and that if she joins the Nine, she'll get everything she's ever wanted. Panacea says that she won't get family. Bonesaw objects that she will get family, and Jack cuts her off, taking a different tact, saying she's derailing, and he's like, "You'll be guilt-free and shame-free, and you'll be able to go back to being a carefree child or whatever." And Panacea's like, "I was never able to feel that way, even as a child." So Jack, switching paths again, he's like, "Go back to your earliest memories." And he's trying to highlight all the worst parts of things. And Panacea says that Jack is just like Tattletale, shade intended. She also says that Tattletale and Skitter were the first people who really paid attention to her, which throws Skitter off, not being able to remember whatever Panacea is referring to. Jack's saying how they were trying to lie that she's secretly good, but he's telling her the truth that she's not secretly good. Perhaps she's secretly evil? And when Panacea says that that's not very convincing, Jack offers the deal that if she even says she'll break her rules, then Jack and the Nine will leave the city, counting it as a loss to the heroes in their game. After the offer is made, someone walks across the room, crunching glass underfoot. Skitter stands up with a step into the doorway, aiming through the empty window frame. Her caution means they don't notice her readying herself. And Jack is walking to Panacea and Bonesaw. Jack is walking to Panacea. Bonesaw is right near the other door of the room, to Skitter's right. And Skitter can tell which one Panacea is because of her fearful demeanor. And process of elimination meant the thing beside her was her sister. And so we get to see the thing. Although, I think the bone crust would be down on the thing and kind of closed, and this is like it goopy opening itself up later in the chapter. Let's see here. Oops. All right, I'm going to take just a moment to sip on my water and stuff. Hope you all like that ASMR there of me drinking something very quietly. So Skitter's so shocked by the weird floating coffin thing with a girl's face etched into bone on the front that she nearly forgets what she's supposed to be doing. But, drawing in a breath, then slow releasing, she shoots Jack in the back. Possibly because of, the very startling imagery of, seeing the sister. She totally fucks up and doesn't factor in recoil, and she kind of just shoots the ceiling with her second shot. But as that's happening, Bonesaw is able to get herself out of the other door, giggling because, Bonesaw's the worst. So, of course, she's like, whenever something bad is happening or she's like maybe around the corner going to kill you, she's like giggling. What else would we expect? But Panacea tries to jump toward Jack to get him with her power, but he starts like blind slashing behind him and she has to retreat, instead going to the sister. Jack was barely injured by the gunshot because of his like tinker body, which Skitter couldn't remember, due to the agnosia. And Jack says that he has a hostage now. Or I guess he didn't say that yet. I think I jumped the gun on that line. Boop. But Panacea activates the sister, saying, "Wake." Skitter feels a wave of extreme terror, which could easily be missed for her like good instincts telling her how dangerous the situation is, but is almost certainly the sister's power washing over her. And the levitating sister smashes through the door to chase Bonesaw. Skitter knows that if she had been the sister's target, she would have frozen and been like totally unable to react. So it's a good thing she's just fighting other horror movie monsters. So Jack says with Victoria gone, yeah, this is the hostage part. Now he's got a hostage, and Panacea is she says that she's been trying to use an airborne plague to kill Jack and Bonesaw, but the bug-killing smoke's primary function was to stop stuff like that in the first place. So, because they had it out for the bugs, it's actually doing its primary function very well. Sad. But Panacea yells to Skitter that she should prioritize killing Jack over trying to save her. Jack brings up the whole lonely monsters idea again, and Skitter calls him out for not actually being that good at manipulating people. She's like, "You bastard, you didn't even get it right the first time." And he's like, "Oh, well, Cherish told me the wrong thing." Which is a line that he says a lot. Skitter can tell that Jack is moving, but can't quite tell where. Apparently the acoustics in the hallway make it very hard to pinpoint sound. But Jack is like, "Your mom would have been disappointed in you. Take that, yo mama." Which Skitter thinks is true, but it doesn't really faze her that much. And then she replies on purpose, trying to provoke Jack. And she's got these tripwires set up at the bottom of the door, ready to try and catch him when he comes through. But instead, Jack probably has his like coolest moment for me in the whole book, where he like quick leaps through the doorway, and then he like dodge rolls on impact with the ground, and then he's like slashing out almost immediately. That's probably the coolest thing he ever does. Skitter's able to guard herself with her costume to some degree, and she gets up in his shit like her teammate taught her when they were sparring. Skitter has to remind herself of things as basic as Jack having fighting experience, and she hates not being able to brain her way through these fights because of the agnosia. But Jack is damaging Skitter's face little by little, and the cuts are getting past her guarding arms, and things are getting real bad, so she runs back into the classroom for respite, and Panacea grabs her, and at first she struggles, not even being able to tell like what's happening. Panacea yells out to her, and she can't even like hear what the words are, because she's got a bunch of blood in her ears. You know, when you have so much blood in your ears that you can't hear what the person right next to you is yelling. A common predicament. But once Panacea is touching her properly, like skin to skin, then Skitter can feel her wounds closing up right away. And Skitter remembers to prioritize fixing her brain, telling Panacea that they need to counteract the miasma. Panacea objects, and Skitter's heart falls because Panacea says that she can't fix the brain. And then Panacea corrects that she'll fall apart if she breaks her rules. Skitter thinks, he's getting away, this stupid girl. It's very uncharitable, Taylor, of her. But, she's also pretty much not wrong. Panacea says breaking her rules would be worse than dying, and Skitter drops that thousands of people will die from this degenerative brain thing slowly, and that Jack might get away and actually end the world, killing billions of people. She stared at me. Even as she looked at me, aghast, I felt something awaken in my mind. Barriers crumbling. So Amy tells us about the parasites and that create the prions, and how she's reverse engineering them to make it so that they are going to do a counter epidemic to cure people on a mass scale. And so, it has to create just the right things, and it takes her a few minutes to make, and she's like, I could make even worse damage than Bonesaw had done if I screw this up. And she, gives Taylor these detailed instructions that I didn't really include about how she needs to do such and such to clear the parasites from the body after about a day. It is going to be important that Skitter remembers this so that she can tell the PRT what information to disseminate to the public, because so many people are going to need to get cured. But I pulled out this little quote. I remembered Tattletale and Brian, Rachel. I could remember Alec and Aisha. There's more people on the list, but I just thought it was funny that on her team, it's Tattletale, all first names except Lisa. So Skitter asks Amy where she got the material to make Glory Girl into a floating sarcophagus, a battle sarcophagus even. And she says that she used pheromones to lure in dogs, cats, and rats, then used her power to weave them all into Victoria. She's gonna fix her later. It'll be fine. No problems will arise. But Amy finishes the cure and sends Skitter to go kill Jack, running to meet up with Atlas. She's lost track of Jack and Bonesaw. There are mechanical spiders carrying smoke trails to throw her off in multiple directions, so she doesn't even know which one to try and follow. And it's just, they'd escaped. So that's the end of the chapter. And obviously stuff happens in the next chapter, but this was the climactic confrontation. And saving Amy was the kind of the important end point that allowed this to not just totally snowball out of control and everyone in the city die or whatever. So yeah, that's some crazy stuff. Final chapter thoughts. I think this is a great one. It's got some crazy horror movie imagery. It's got gross powers stuff happening. It's got evil giggling little girls. It's got Jack being a shit but also being dumb in a funny way. It's got emotional confrontations. It's got Skitter and Amy conversations, which I'm sure that Victoria loved. There's something for everybody in this chapter. Except if you don't like horror stuff and this would gross you out, then this isn't for you. But, yeah, I guess I'll move on to 4.11. There are multiple trails of the bug-killing smoke, and Skitter kind of tries to follow the trails, but realizes pretty soon that she needs to focus on like actual goals. Jack and Bonesaw can either go downtown to help Siberian, or they can go torture, murder, cherish. So they probably picked, in fact, they obviously picked to go torture, murder, cherish. What else would they do? We know these people. So Skitter realizes that regardless of what they're doing, she needs to go downtown and start spreading the cure, and then find Tattletale as well. While she's going downtown, she tries to follow the smoke trails that are leading in that direction, in case one of them really is Jack and Bonesaw. But she does have to waste a lot of bugs to do it, and she's feeling like self-doubt and guilt, goo-ilt, these kinds of emotions. She thinks about her dad for a moment, and she's trying to assess the situation, and she actually thinks maybe the docks weren't hit as hard as, or the North End where her dad lives, weren't hit as hard for the first time in this series of ongoing disasters that started with Bakuda and led to Leviathan and the Slaughterhouse-9, and now this. All this bullshit. Let's see here. She realizes that that Tattletale needs to be her number one priority so that they can make proper plans and like have enough info to win fights and stuff. So she loses a little time checking after some spider-borne smoke trails, but keeps herself heading for downtown, hoping that because they're on foot, Jack and Bonesaw won't be making as good time as she does on her giant flying beetle. Flying beetles are pretty fast. Skitter finds Tattletale talking to a very angry Rachel, who has big dogs with her. Sirius, Bentley, and Bastard are all fully powered up. Slowly moving in on Tattletale with Rachel, the dogs are like moving up, angrily growling behind her for presents. Skitter lands next to Tattletale, and she says that she has a cure, but Rachel doesn't believe her, and she keeps eye contact, and they have a pretty decent sized back and forth. But Skitter tries a basic story about like them eating Greek food together in Arc 7, and says that Rachel should search her feelings. She knows them to be friends. But Rachel doesn't want to believe her and continues to advance. So there are like more angry accusations from Rachel and some feeble attempts to win her over by Skitter. Rachel's pretty worked up and wants to leave, but Tattletale's been trying to keep her here so that she can't get split off and go back to the train yard. Not only would her disease get worse and like maybe she just dies alone there, but if the 9 did go try and find her there, she'd be easy pickings. So Skitter tells Tattletale that she doesn't think it would have worked because Jack talks too much and he's too much of a slime for Rachel to have really listened to what he said. She'd bounce off it. And after being totally incensed at the idea that someone thinks that she's attached to them emotionally, Rachel keeps moving in on Skitter, who's staying her ground and keeping the eye contact. And she doesn't back down, and she lets Rachel get right up to her. "No way. I could like someone like you." "Just going by looks? When you can't see half my face?" So Skitter pulls down her mask and moves the bugs away so that Rachel can see her full face. Rachel makes one more threat, and then Taylor swoops in and kisses her on the lips. Ah! The crowd goes wild. These sorts of kissing noises all happen. But Rachel punches the thirsty Taylor, sending her flying and knocking off her nerd glasses. Take that, you nerd. Don't just try and jump out and kiss me. And then Rachel's mad, but the cure does work, and she starts to recognize Taylor. For some reason, Taylor puts the bugs back on her face. Rachel confronts Taylor about stuff again, but Taylor just keeps being like, I don't know what to tell you, bud. She's, a lot of sighing at this point. It's like, I can only really tell you that we're friends so many times, and now I'm just gonna sigh at you when you question it. So the cure starts spreading through the water, turning it from scary blood water to regular dirty standing street water. And Tattletale's annoyed that Taylor put the bugs back on her face when they still need to share a kiss. And then says the same thing that all my ace friends say when we're forced to kiss to spread curing parasites. No tongue. And then, the crowd goes wild again. Woo! Another set of different shippers lose their minds. They decide that Rachel should go around curing people, and that the other two will try to chase down the 9, who they, are correctly assuming will go to Cherish. Tattletale and Skitter ride Bentley and Atlas to the boat graveyard, and I had really slimmed this part down, honestly. So, Greg says, why shake when we can touch other things, like lips? Skitter probably, but also Paul Armstrong. It's so funny. I copied that movie onto a thumb drive this very morning to give to somebody. I love Lost Skeleton of Cadavra. I know that this is a worm program, but we will take a moment now to acknowledge the great movie The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra. And I feel like if you added the Lost Skeletons soundtrack onto these 2 chapters, they would go from scary to incredibly funny, in a way that I approve of. Anyway, so, they, they decide that Rachel should go around curing people, and the other 2 will chase... Oh, no, I said that. Tattletale and Skitter are riding, blah, blah. They're gonna have Skitter scout ahead, using bugs, and they want to make sure they know where Cherish is before they're in her range, because they don't know if she's gonna try and use her power on them or not. So they find a group of people who seem like they might be the 9, but things are really suspicious, like... for one thing, Cherish would have sensed them, but she's not telling the 9, so Tattletale's like, I think that she wants us to attack so that we'll be able to, take the 9 by surprise, and Skitter's like, I don't know, that seems like maybe it's a double gambit where she's pretending she doesn't tip off her team or whatever to lure us in, and then Tattletale's like, you're gonna lose your mind, double second guessing yourself like that. And Skitter's like, I need to be sure. I have a gut feeling, And she had the same kind of feeling previously, 3 chapters ago, when she didn't trust Jack and Bonesaw at the outset. And then, she's got to go with her deep parahuman intuition that she's feeling. And even though it's a risk to her, after they take a short break, Skitter decides to go in alone, and she leaves Tattletale with the plan that they'll call in the whereabouts of the 9 to the PRT and get another firebombing or something from Pigot if they don't hear back from Skitter soon enough. But she goes in and she finds the final set of decoys are in a room inside one of the boats where there's like a collar chain left behind that Skitter thinks Cherish was held by, and there are, a final set of decoys that she thinks that Jack had wanted her to kill innocent people by accident while trying to attack the Nine, as a prank. And Skitter calls Tattletale and tells her what she's found, and that they need to call Coil to get medical attention for these people. And the person who she had thought was Cherish thanks her and stuff, and it's she feels all hollow inside, but she does kind of have a hero moment where she saves these people instead of super murdering them with bugs. I like how Vic reworked the chain. Like, it was more solidly together, and then it got broken apart and stuff, and put under the layer of water. Also, like, the layering on the water that I'm now watching fill in looks pretty great. Vale, it is the art appreciation time. So it is... Oh, I didn't realize. It's left-right reversed from the... As we know, Vic often left-right reverses things because she knows that she has a drawing preference to one direction, like most artists do. I can't say all artists, because I don't know. But I think the vast majority of artists kind of tend to one direction or the other based on if they're like left or right-handed or their style or whatever. But yeah, I really like this scene. It's the knife and the thing. We don't get to see any of the decoy people, but I kind of... It's like I said at the top of the previous chapter. I really like the like hollow, empty world of these two chapters. It just, everything feels like... Vale says, the art is always excellent. This is no exception. Thank you. I'm on behalf of Vic, I thank you. So yeah, the final message that was stabbed into the wall that we see there is from Jack, and it says, "We concede our loss to you, Brockton Bay. As per my agreement with Amelia, we'll be leaving your fascinating city. It was fun. Don't worry about Cherish. She's sleeping somewhere at the bottom of the bay. Bonesaw was kind enough to crank up her receptive range toward negative emotions and remove her filters. The girl will personally experience every awful feeling Brockton Bay's inhabitants do, and with the benefit of Alan's tech, she'll get to do it for a very, very, very long time. A departure marked not with a bang, but a whimper. I'm sure you understand. Yours truly, Jack." So, yeah, final chapter thoughts. I mean, this one's good. It's got the kissing scene. I think it's very funny, and there's a bit of a heartfelt moment where I feel like you feel the bond between Rachel and Taylor grow when she feels yet again like, I don't understand why Taylor keeps saving me. But it's not as much of a like the previous chapter. I think 14.10 is like kind of in a higher echelon of chapter. This one is just a normal amount of really good. It's like I didn't mention it in the summary. I actually skipped past it a little too fast, I think, but it's like a noticeable difference when the agnosia goes away, and I think it's just so well done in these chapters. Like, I don't know if I can say it's better done here than it was in 14.9 or whatever, but I just think that the feeling of it in these two chapters is or I mean in the previous chapter, and like seeing the other characters have agnosia while Taylor's able to see them in a more neutral, realistic like perception, then like it's just really well done. Um, anyway, moving on to the arc stuff, sort of stuff about both these chapters, because I've already been talking about them that way. Vale says, these chapters were very intense. Indeed, indeed. I'm actually kind of glad that not that I want to delay a chapter ever, but I was already only going to do one chapter this week, with 14.11, so swapping it to the one chapter last week didn't feel like a detriment to the schedule or anything. And, I'm kind of glad that chapter was its own thing, because it's so different from, they're all different from each other, but, the fact that you're in this, dramatic irony state where you know that they're the 9 and she doesn't, it's got, such a different tone than either of these ones to me. Because it feels like she could die at any moment. Whereas in this one, even though she's fighting Jack, who is good at fighting, it's just not as, I don't know, something. Vale says, these two chapters go together. Yeah. I can't fully articulate it, but I agree. So I had said I love the dilapidated locations and stuff, the ominous atmosphere, then the uneasy feeling at the end because of how much things ended, like Jack said, with a whimper instead of a bang. And without a resounding victory against the 9, Skitter's just left, unsettled and mentally scarred. And she does have, a moral victory against the 9, where she saves those people and doesn't kill them. But she, the most victory she gets is she drove Jack out of that room. And, it is obviously a pretty fucking big deal that she's able to, get the counteragent to the bioweapon and save everybody, but it just doesn't have the same feeling as if they had caught Jack and Bonesaw here, and now Legend was cured and he used lasers to laser the fuck out of them, and now they're dead. They escaped, weird bad stuff happened, they got Hookwolf and they're taking him with them to join them, and not great for our heroes who feel very bad inside. I like that there's tons of loose ends at the end of this portion, because we're in the middle chunk of a very, very long story, so we need a lot to still be going on, even though this sort of movement of the story is about to end with the interlude. Moving on to the characters, I just had pulled out a few things here. I joked, Skitter when a little girl is her enemy. If I'd known she was there, I would have crawled over to the door at that end and gunned her down at point blank. I do think it's just funny when you take these things out of context, how insane and ruthless she sounds all the time. But Amy, and imagine this is in a meme style. You, little girl with science biology power. Me, big girl with touch biology power. We are not the same. I kept thinking that, and I didn't want to write it into the description because it was such a derail, so I'm like, okay, just write it in the character section to get it out of your head. But then for Jack, I like the part where it's Amy said, "You guys are losing," and then he goes, "Up for debate. I'm really quite thrilled with the current situation. Very enjoyable. We've certainly made an impact." He's just such a shit. He's a great villain. And other character stuff. Amy has some of her lowest moments in the previous chapter. her real lowest moments are yet to come, but she's getting there. Jack was not really very convincing. I think that he just gets people to do bad stuff sometimes because he's like, I'll kill you. And it's like, oh, you were really manipulative with your I'll kill you. Bonesaw, it's like interesting to see her like just fully like, yeah, I know that like Jack like talks down to me and stuff and looks upon me, as a like a lesser person, but it's fine. He knows what he's doing. And he does indeed know what he's doing. I'm not sure that makes it fine. Moving on to the... Oh, wait, no, I should talk about Rachel and Tattletale. What am I doing? I only talked about the characters from one chapter. Rachel is, like, at her Rachelist right now. She's, like, super antisocial. She, doesn't jump straight to killing, but she's totally ready to kill Tattletale and Skitter. Not knowing who they are, obviously, but either way. I think this is another, like, tight bonding moment for them. And, speaking of Rachel, I've got a dog scratching to get into this room, so... Come in. But Tattletale, I like that when she is under the influence of the thing, she's still impaired, but she's like almost a normal person's like level of savvy because she's her power just fills in enough of the gaps. It's like how she can keep track of Aisha, which is a fun thing. She can't like really keep track of Aisha, but she kind of knows. And then, alright, powers, knowledge, and world building. I pulled in the quote from when she's first able to hear Bonesaw. Minds do think alike. I did something very similar for Siberian. A girl's voice. And this time reading through is like the first time I like, my brain latched on to this detail in the two chapters. Because I had never really, like, I don't know, just somehow I missed this, but it's just crazy that at some point between the miasma being set off and, like, Bonesaw meeting up with Skitter on the ground when they're tricking her, Bonesaw had time to put Siberian into a cocoon or mannequin pod of some kind, possibly. And I mean, maybe she's just misinterpreting what happened, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I also pulled out the full description of the Glory Girl Victoria Dallin coffin cocoon sarcophagus. I would have called it a coffin, but it was clearly made of something living. It resembled a massive growth of flesh that had been shaped into a vague diamond shape, gnarled with horny callus and toenail-like growths that protected it and reinforced it at the edges. On the side closest to me, a girl's face was etched into an oversized growth of bone. It was unmoving, decorative, with locks of wavy long hair that wrapped around the sides of the diamond. The sister floated a foot over the floor. The mask of bone drew upward, like an opened lid, to reveal a clear sphere containing vitreous fluid and a teenage girl with blonde hair. Her eyes were open, but she looked half asleep. Her hair fanned out around her, flowing in the fluid that seemed thicker than water. Her arms were outstretched, but her hands and lower body were hidden by the meat that surrounded her. The edges of the shell that were unfolding around her curved forward like the horns of a bull. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. These chapters are like filled to the brim with, I mean, this is like me just hopping away from that because, like, I don't know. Good art about it. Good description. I don't have much more to say about it other than, like, wow, Wildbow, good job. But yeah, we get tons of stuff in these chapters about the city's current state and the history of, like, the class struggle here. The boat graveyard stuff is really great. I like when Taylor stops to think about the docks and how they're partially spared from this disaster only because the water infrastructure was not repaired. So, like, the city has failed so hard that it looped around to having a barrier. Anyway. I don't know. If I were a resident of Brockton Bay who still lived here during this and you know, survived this, I'd just be like, man, everything is just the craziest it could possibly be. Like, I don't even know. The world has, as they say in Hamilton, turned upside down. But not in a good, we want a war way. In a bad, our whole city almost got wiped out by red mist way. Yes. I think that's the end of that. And I think I'm going to move on to the audience participation. This week we had 2 questions. Do you think Jack could have gotten Amy to join her if Taylor hadn't shown up? And I'm gonna read that one's answers before I read the second question. Greg had said for the first question, 90% yes. Jack's not as good at convincing people as he thinks, but Amy is particularly vulnerable. True, and that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that he maybe could have, and that Taylor stepped in at the right moment where, like, Jack would have been approaching Amy and then, like, been, yes, come with us. And she'd be like, you know. So Vale says, I think Jack did get Amy to join him. He told her to indulge, and she did. I don't think she would have ever actually become a part of the SH9, though. I can't think of any condition where she is a teammate. That makes sense. And then the second question was which shippers lost their minds the hardest during this chapter? And then Greg says, the bug plus bitch shippers for sure. This is the start of their friendship blooming into something beautiful and new. And then Vale said, I don't really follow shipping much. I find it funny to joke about, but it isn't something I pay much attention to. So I don't know which group was most affected. Well, it was mostly a tongue-in-cheek question, but I do appreciate it is kind of funny to have the perspective of someone who doesn't ship. Oh, and the bug plus bitch ship name, according to Greg, is Butch. Yeah, the Butch ship, I think, is pretty common. I would say that as far as I've seen for art, the most art for Taylor is with Rachel, but I've also seen her with Golem. I've seen her with Gru, of course, pretty common one. With Tattletale. I think also, I'm trying to think, there was someone else. I think I have seen her with Amy. I think that's not exclusively in Vic's head. Oh, and there was this one of her and Alexandria. And these are all chaste. They're all fully clothed in these images. So no worries here, people. But with no more answers here to be had, I am gonna ask the question for next week: which horror movie monster or character would you want to see be a member of the Slaughterhouse-9? Let's get that copied over. If I have it written during the episode, then I can paste it before I forget to paste it. But I think I'm going to start the outro song, everybody, because I think that we've reached the end of our time with this week's stream. And hell, why not relive the magic of the speed draws while we go out. As it has been since the start of the Slaughterhouse 9 section, the music used this episode is Infestation by ScarlettXOX. Oh, and I have a second draft of the song for the next portion of the story, and I'm already really, really happy with it. And Scarlett did a Twitch stream recently at her channel, twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Yep. Oh, my word, Scarlett's streaming now? Well, I will have to end my stream and enter that soon. But, yeah, she did a breakdown of the song for 45 minutes, and it was really cool to get to see. She kept being like, I'm giving away the secrets of how I make the songs, and so she thought she was giving away these secrets, and I was just like, I don't know, that just makes it seem more impressive. Like I didn't really have an idea of how you got to where it was, but like, it doesn't look easy. She used 31 tracks so far for like her program can only hold 32 simultaneous tracks, and it's just like basically tapped out already. She could add one more thing. But anyway, so our Discord server link can be found in the description of the stream and the YouTube channel. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. There's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. And I am going to mute my mic and let the rest of the outro play. I'll see you guys next week.